Hey, it's me, a girl in her Bible, and we're here to talk about the book of Lamentations. And it is a short book with lots in it. To give you a little bit of background, it is written, well, it doesn't state who the author is, but we scholars believe it was Jeremiah, which we just finished. And you can actually, now that you've read Jeremiah, you know that lots of things were happening that were horrible. And he had to prophet, he was a prophet that was called the weeping prophet because of the message he was bringing. And Lamentations is a book of mourning. And it's a beautiful book. Some of the stuff in it is rough. But it is the heart outpouring of sadness and hurt because of what's going on in Babylon. And part of it it's actually, I'm reading this little note. It's written in 5 chapters and it's 5 successive poems. And it's actually kind of an acrostic in 4 of the poems where the Hebrew alphabet, each line begins with a new letter of the Hebrew alphabet. That's kind of a little English fact for you little nerds like me. And but more so the background is the idea of God's people thinking they were invincible, because Jerusalem, where the Babylons invaded and conquered the city of Jerusalem, they thought that it was impossible because of how, first of all, they were God's people and God had his hand over them to protect them. But Jerusalem sat on a mountain. And so it was all built with walls, and they just thought that it was a military impossibility for anybody to come in and conquer them. And but because of their disobedience and idol worship and the not repenting, that God removed his hand and allowed things to happen. So the book of Lamentations is a part of that. And in chapter 1, you have it starts out, how she sits alone. The city once crowded with people, she who was great among the nations has become like a widow. It just breaks your heart because all of us know what it feels like to be alone, and to be God's people alone when you've always had God with you is heartbreaking. These people were led, by a cloud. They were just led by God's Spirit during the day and a pillar of fire by night. And it's just heartbreaking that this happened. And as this poet writes it, it's a beautiful poem. Verse 18 says, "The Lord is just, for I have rebelled against his command. Listen, all you people, look at my pain." So listen to me and hear what I'm saying. The Lord is just. I am the one who rebelled. I'm the one that caused some of this. And I is also a larger term, not just one person. But when you get to chapter 2, it gets a little bit, you see the wrath of God, how the Lord has overshadowed daughter Zion with his anger. He has thrown down Israel's glory from heaven to earth. He did not acknowledge his footstool in the day of his anger. Without compassion, the Lord has swallowed up all the dwellings of Jacob. And so you see in chapter 2 the wrath of God and how horrible it can be. And sometimes we forget to preach on the wrath of God because we talk so much about the love of God, but you can't have one without the other. A healthy fear of God is very important. Chapter 3 is, my little subtitle says, "Hope through God's mercies." But the first part is a whole lot of hurt. He has worn away my flesh and skin. He has broken my bones. He has walled me in so I cannot get out. He has weighed me down with chains. Just horrible stuff, that just the pain of the consequence of their sin. But you get to verse 22, and I even wrote, I don't know if you can see it, but I even drew a sun because you see a hope here. Because of the Lord's faithful love, we do not perish, for his mercies never end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness, I say. The Lord is my portion. Therefore, I will put my hope in him. That is a very famous verse, especially that his mercies are new every morning. And in 25 to 27, the Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the person who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for salvation from the Lord. It's good for a man to bear the yoke while he is still young. I just love the fact that it talks about how in the midst of all this stuff and all the consequences and all this pain, that the Lord is good. And I just made a note I just said, I'm so thankful that his mercies are new every morning. I also pray to wait patiently to see what you are doing, Lord. In verse 58, I love verse 58, because again, you see the champion, God says, you championed my cause, Lord. You redeemed my life, which sounds a whole lot like what Jeremiah wrote in Jeremiah. And so it's beautiful there. Right before it says 55, I called on your name, Lord, from the depths of the pit. You heard my plea. Do not ignore my cry for relief. You came near whenever I called you. You said, do not be afraid. Then 58, you championed my cause, Lord. You redeemed my life. So that's a beautiful, beautiful passage there. And then it ends with a prayer in chapter 5 for the Lord to remember what happened to us. And it goes through and it ends with 21 and 22. Lord, bring us back to yourself so we may return. Renew our days as in former times, unless you have completely rejected us and are intensely angry with us. And it's like a prayer going, please bring us back to you. Renew where we were before, unless you're just really mad. And I just made notes here of all the sins in America today and how wretched we've become and how we think we are invincible because of the things that have happened in the past. But we have now, in a way, turned from God. We've taken prayer out of everything. We've taken God out of everything. Now people are even trying to take God out of the Pledge of Allegiance. We have turned from God, which is the people that came over to start this country started it for religious freedom, not to change anyone and give everybody the freedom of religion. But that doesn't mean that you can't have one. But we've just turned from God, but we think we're invincible. And I just wonder if some of the things that have happened in the time of Israel and the rebellion and the wrath just makes me curious where we're headed. So my prayer is for America as a country and as people of God that are here, Gentiles and Jews, God's people under the blood of Christ can come together and see revival in our country. That would be such a beautiful, beautiful thing, to revive America for the love of Christ. So with that thought, I will leave you. Lamentations is a very sad book, but it has some really beautiful things in it. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will be starting the book of Ezekiel next time. Bye.